Thanks, Leader.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet on the 17th of June 2021. First item is apologies for absence.
I've had none, Leader. Everybody's present.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much. We'll go then to disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests. I have a few, so okay, I'll go to Councillor Francis Davis first.
Yeah, can I declare a personal and prejudicial interest in item 15? That's in the open session, and item 17 in the closed session as a director of the National Waterfront Museum Swansea and the Wales National Pool Swansea.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Child.
Thank you. I declare exactly the same interest as Councillor Francis Davis as a director of the Wales National Pool Swansea. I'm also declaring an interest on item 14, the sustainable landscapes, as a member of the Gower AONB partnership. I think that's personal but not prejudicial, but I'll take advice.
Councillor Child, if I can, I've given similar advice. Yes, I think it's a personal interest as you've been appointed by the authority. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, similar prejudicial interests in those items as a governor of the Wales National Pool, and also personal interest in item 11 as a LEA appointed governor of Ysgol Gyfyn Gwyr.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Hopkin.
Thanks, Leader. I'd like to declare an interest in item 20, Flying Start, that the school I'm a governor on is mentioned in the report. Personal only.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, personal interest, agenda item 14, a member of the OMB and Sustainable Development Fund.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, looking for a bit of legal advice. Item 14, Chairman. I'm a newly appointed member of the OMB, but also I'm presenting the report, so it's certainly not a prejudicial interest. There may be a personal interest, which I'm happy to declare, but looking for a bit of legal clarity on it, please.
Yeah, personal interest only, councillors.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just to declare a personal interest in item 11 as I'm a LEA governor and Gore School, and also the same in the Flying Start Capital report, because also Gore School is mentioned in that report, and that's personal interest only. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Are there any other interests? If not, can I just ask you to, or remind you to complete the forms and return them after the meeting? That'd be great. We'll move then to the minutes of the meeting. They're on pages 1 to 7. I haven't been notified of any changes. Councillor Francis Davis.
Yes, on the minutes on page 2, 1 to 7, reference was made to you congratulating the AMs at the last meeting. That was, although I'm out of order calling them AMs. The date there is the 6th of May 2020. Obviously just a typo. It should be 2021.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Francis Davis. We'll amend that. Okay, are there any other? No, if there are no other changes to the amendment to the minutes, then can I ask? I'll move them as a true record. Somebody second.
Happy to second.
Okay, all in favour of accepting? Yeah, thank you very much. Those are accepted. So we'll move then to announcements. The Leader of the Council. I don't have any today. We'll move then to public question time. Have we had any questions from members of the public for today's meeting?
We haven't had any, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move then to councillor question time. Are there any councillors present who wish to ask a question? If there aren't, then we'll move to item 7, which is supporting education recovery. And I'll go to Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Leader. This is the fruit of the work that the Education and Skills PDC undertook for most of the last municipal year, looking at what the issues were in relation to how Swansea schools should respond and move forward after the pandemic. Can I thank, because I was chair of the PDC at the time, thank the committee members and the directorate for their support, and also Gareth Bosden as clerk to the committee. I mean, they all went over and above what could be expected in a very difficult period for the council and for our schools. What we're looking at here is the development of a whole council approach that prioritises emotional well-being, prioritises the social well-being of our children alongside academic learning. We recognise that these are unprecedented events, that the last year has been hard for all our people, but especially our children and young people, and is putting Swansea in a position to help those young people to fulfil their potential, both academically and in their life journey in general. And I think the measures we're proposing arising from this report will enable us to do that. So I got great pleasure in moving the report, Chair, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm very happy to second. Are there any comments or questions for Councillor Smith on the report? If not, you'll see the recommendations there on page 8. Can I ask you to cast your votes, please? Or ask Mr. Bosden to launch the vote. Apologies.
Just launch the vote now. Leader?
Okay, so you should be able to see the record on your screen.
So can all members see it?
Aye.
We'll take your own vote at the end, Councillor Lewis.
Okay, thank you.
Has everyone voted?
Aye.
Yep.
So I'll close the poll now.
10 and 2.
Oh yeah, and Councillor Andrea Lewis, sorry.
4 against.
I vote for.
Thank you. There we are. Yeah, votes closed, Chairman. That's unanimous 4 then.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. We'll move then on to the next agenda item, which is the outturn report for the coming year, for the year just gone, 2021. I'll go to Mr. Smith first for technical introduction, and then obviously I'll reserve the right to make some comments myself, and obviously members are welcome to comment as we go. So, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Before I go into the detail of the first item, I would just like to say a few words, if I may. These are clearly astonishing results in what has been an exceptional past year, and I do have to record my thanks to my finance teams and the support I've had from senior colleagues. I don't think you'll ever see an outturn report quite like this again. If you do, good luck to you and good luck to my successors. But it's a very pleasing report, and it's one of those rare occasions where you're going to get your treasurer turn up and not put his grumpy face on in terms of the past year. Having said that, there are some headwinds coming. There are supply side issues. Pay and prices, which we don't control, are looking to tick up and are more than we've budgeted for in the coming year. And as I've consistently given advice, given Council's ambitious capital programme, there are significant borrowing costs to come in the future, and you'll see referenced in the report, I deferred borrowing in year, and at the time of writing the report, I'd borrowed money. I've now borrowed a total of £75 million in the current year already, entirely in line with the borrowing strategy, locking in at the lowest ever rates on PWLB money, giving assurance for the next 50 years for the borrowing costs, bringing down the average cost of borrowing. So all, as I say, in line with policy, but you will start to see some of those underspend items on pay and prices disappearing, and you will start to see some of the borrowing savings also disappear. We do have 2 other matters. You'll see in the outturn report a very substantial council tax loss, and I'll come back to that in due course. We were compensated in the last year. There is as yet no guarantee of a compensation scheme in the coming year. And we do have the inherent uncertainties of the post-Brexit levelling up funds volume of replacement grants. I am continuing to explore with Welsh Government colleagues what WLGA and the SWT further support that may come from the Welsh Government in the year, but the outlook remains uncertain. So with that cautionary tale at the start, back to the report itself, I will just draw your attention to the main matters in the report. And I start by drawing your attention to section 2.1 in terms of above the line service underspending and central underspending. You'll note immediately in that table in 2.1 the 20.349 million pounds highlighted in bold. That's entirely consistent with what you received last month, and I gave you early officer advice and put you in a position to be able to agree that £20 million recovery fund. It is especially pleasing, having brought the outturn a month earlier than ever, to also have the figure assured. It shows the quality of the forecasting and certainty I had to be able to give officer advice to recommend that £20 million recovery fund. As I indicate there in that table, there are significant underspends in last year on the contingency fund and on central inflation provisions. The one-off cost was some extra central Welsh Government grants that we received. I've referenced the council tax collection shortfall in the end. I will come back to that right at the end. But you'll see in that the very substantial underspending that occurred and has contributed significantly to the overall position. I draw your attention secondly to section 2.9.1, the table right at the end, which shows, as we've referred to throughout the year, that the scale of flexing of the revenue budgets and the sheer amount of additional money that's flowed in and out of the council, and shows very clearly the very substantial Welsh Government support we've had through the year. The rest of the report is in normal fashion, and I don't propose to refer to the individual directorate comments in terms of unders and overs. I take it that you've all read the report, and you've got any questions you can ask them of the relevant directors in due course. Section 3 sets out what I've charged the contingency fund, and more importantly what I haven't had to charge there, and hence contributed to the overall underspending. Section 4 summarises the schools position, and this is important again in terms of noting particularly section 4.4. Schools reserves and schools balances are obviously held by schools and are not included in the revenue outturn statement. They're effectively neutralised, and you'll see that schools reserves nearly trebled in year. That is as a direct consequence of some very late settlements from Welsh Government, much like we received ourselves as a council. And I do expect there to be some significant drawdowns in the current year by schools, but it's still nonetheless reassuring to have very substantial reserves and strong position for schools going into the current year. I have indicated in section 5, and I've already sort of ruined it partly by my preamble in indicating that the risks and headwinds that there are. I won't repeat them at this stage. Section 6, again, not surprisingly, references the COVID impact, and for us, because of the relative generosity of Welsh Government support and some actions taken by ourselves to be fleet of foot, how we've managed to balance and more than balance and report the biggest ever outturn position. Section 7 draws it all together, and in particular, I draw attention to 7.31 because that summarises my recommendations, and in 7.4 in terms of the contributions to reserves, which you will be asked at the end, once you've commented, Leader, to consider passing a recommendation to approve those transfers into reserves and bolster the position in the current year. The only other item I've draw your attention to, because it's a long, complicated report, is I draw your attention to Appendix A, which is the entire year's activity on a page, including all of those large flexing of budgets. Particularly just want to draw your attention, this is the first time ever I can recall every single directorate line reporting an underspend above the line, and hence driving that £20 million recovery fund. Going down, you'll see underspends on every single line in that table, apart from the £194,000 of additional savings. And again, we got compensated to the tune of several £1 million because the Welsh Government recognised we might not be able to deliver all of our planned savings as a result of the pandemic. So as I say, all of those very encouraging minus signs, i.e. underspends. The earmarked reserves contributions are summarised 2/3 of the way down the table. And then the only bit of bad news in the context, as I say, is the council tax position. When 2 years ago we reported a £300,000 loss, year before last a £700,000 loss. We have posted a £2.4 million loss in year. That does give you some indication of the scarring that's going on in the wider economy. For last year's outturn, it doesn't matter because, again, we were compensated by the Welsh Government effectively in full by the time I'd concluded the balance on the collection fund. But it is one that will concern me going forward. And it's something that I'm sure will concern other councils too. So in summary, and as I say, I go back to what I said at the beginning, for the general fund, an astonishing position, really bolsters the position really, really strongly. You do have to take my slight tempering it in terms of kind of a treasurer that's always permanently happy. You've got to have a bit of worry about the future. But clearly the scale of the bolstering of reserves, the significant steps you've already taken to commit to the recovery fund, the amount you've set aside for schools in terms of their ICT reserves, I see this as very much laying the foundations for the long term. With some concerns in the short term over matters that you can't control. But that's all I need to say, I think, on the report. For danger of getting too excited and my head exploding, leader. So probably about time that I hand over to you to provide some calm, wise words of wisdom.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. It's usually the other way around, I guess. But no, can I begin by thanking you and your team again for the efforts that have been made, and not just at helping us to arrive at this position, which of course is unprecedented and very welcome, but also for the additional work that your teams have done during the pandemic to support businesses across Swansea, to keep the Swansea economy ticking over whilst we've had once in a century restrictions imposed upon our way of life. So thank you again for everything that you've done. Just referring back to the document, I think, yes, it's a very welcome position. Yes, it's unprecedented, but part of it's not by accident. I mean, this is exactly where we had hoped to be in terms of making sure that we could deliver record investment into services. We could deliver record investment for regeneration and jobs and growth in our economy, and we could bolster the council's finances at the same time. There doesn't need to be a choice between doing one or the other, and I think we have set our stall. We've been ambitious, we've been bold, and these are the strongest finances I think the council's had in over 2 decades. So it certainly is a position that we should very much welcome. And as you've referred to, Mr. Smith, again, this allows us to bolster the finances so that we can ensure that the costs of regeneration, the costs of investment, do not fall directly to the taxpayers, and those costs in the medium term, probably for the next 10 years or so now, are covered by the provision of the capital equalisation reserve and other reserves. It's very good to see us bolstering social care as well, because we know there are some headwinds there. And obviously we have created a number of other specific reserves which may be used in due course if we don't see a fair settlement from UK government as part of the comprehensive spending review. So, as you quite rightly pointed out, always there are some unknowns ahead, and we will do our best, as we've done in the past, to navigate these. But this is by any stretch or any measure a remarkable budget, and I think even the leader of the opposition commented as such in scrutiny, saying he had never seen a budget like it. So I guess high praise indeed. And it is a budget delivered by a Labour administration with the largest ever capital programme, and a Labour administration that is delivering on every one of its promises it made for the people of Swansea. So very pleased to bring this report today, and I'm happy to formally move the report, and I would welcome one of my colleagues moving to second, please.
More than happy.
Very happy to second.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions before we ask Mr. Borsden to go to the vote? Okay, if not, Mr. Borsden, if you can launch the vote, please.
Yeah, I'll launch the vote now, Leader. So it should be on screen. Everybody got it?
Yep.
Just give you a moment to cast your vote. Councillor Lewis, do you want to do your vote verbally?
Yes, please. I vote for.
Here. And now close the poll. Again, Leader, that's unanimous for the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. I'll move on next then to the Housing Revenue Outturn 2021, item 9. Mr. Smith, first, quickly, for you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief on this one. As is normally my wont on this item, I turn up and say that the HRA's had a tidy year. Figures more modest than the General Fund report, but again, very much so a tidy year. You can see a recommendation noting a £903,000 underspend and a recommendation to be transferred into the HRA reserves. In terms of the report itself, it sets out quite clearly there was some underspending on repairs and maintenance, as we rightly prioritised only essential repairs and maintenance first over other matters. The bad debt provision we expected in terms of some of the economic scarring hasn't occurred in the last year, and that's enabled us to make some savings there. And as I've referred to in both the general fund report and when you come to the capital one, we have been very strategic in our borrowing decisions, which has enabled us to reduce the cost of borrowing and bank some further savings there for the HRA. So I have nothing further to add in terms of technical advice. I would hand over, or suggest I would hand over to Councillor Lewis as the Cabinet member for the HRA, with your permission, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yes, I'll go to Councillor Lewis to move the report and make any comments she wishes to make. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. As the Section 151 officer has outlined, it's a very positive report. We were anticipating a hike in rent arrears. I just wanted to place on record my thanks to the rents team. Not only have we increased that team, but we've also introduced rent surgeries and further support to prevent people going into further arrears. That seems to be working very well, and so I'm very pleased to welcome the report and very happy to move it and take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I'm very happy to second that report. Are there any questions or comments? Again, a very, very healthy position. Okay, if not, Mr. Brosnan, if we could launch the vote, please.
Yeah, launch vote now, Leader. Should be on your screens now. All members see it and received it?
Yeah.
Give me time to vote. Councillor Lewis, would you like to do your vote verbally again, please?
Thank you. Yes, I vote for.
Thank you. Yeah, close the poll now, Leader. Again, that's unanimous for recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, colleagues. We'll go to item 10, capital outturn and financing, and I'll come back again to Mr. Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I can be very brief. This report you'll see is in the normal format for the capital report, and you see the reporting of the overall capital programme, and is normally the case some slippage, which I always rub my hands with glee because it's helped on the revenue financing strategy. Again, the point I would make, at risk of expressing too many superlatives, is you have two recommendations in front of you. One, to note that it's the largest ever capital programme at over 250 million, and yes, there has been 40 odd million pounds worth of slippage, but remarkably more than 80% of the biggest ever capital programme delivered in the midst of the pandemic, including some very, very substantial flexing, is again incredible results. So the second recommendation is that you roll that money forward into 21-22, and you will have another very sizable capital programme in 21-22, given the council's capital ambition going forward. I think the rest of the report lays out very clearly in normal fashion what's been spent where, and I again do pass thanks on to my colleagues. I mean, I only have to provide the money. In this case, people have managed to deliver an astonishingly large capital programme. So I go back to you, Leader, at that point.
Great, thank you, Mr. Smith. Yeah, I'll be a bit briefer on this one, but certainly, as you've said, biggest ever capital programme. Inevitably, given the lockdowns we've experienced in the past year, there would have been some slippage on our capital programme, but it still remains the biggest ever for us and one of the biggest in Wales. I did note to the UK government ministers that as part of our capital programme, which of course is not just based on economic investments, but also investment in our schools estate, in our highways, in our housing and elsewhere, we are spending more on schools than the UK government is providing currently for levelling up across Wales, which shows the scale of what we're doing locally. In terms of the report itself, again, I want to pay tribute to all of the teams that have helped deliver this, specifically the teams working in education to deliver our new 21st Century Schools programme, and the teams working in the city centre to deliver the economic regeneration the city badly requires, and of course will require as we emerge from COVID. So very, very happy, and again look forward to a very, very substantial programme of delivery and investment next year. Okay, could I ask one of my colleagues if they'd like to formally second?
Happy to second.
Does anybody wish to comment or have any questions? If not, the two recommendations are there on page 35. Oh, sorry, Councillor Francis.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment really on the work of officers during this time, and especially the people working on, well, the finance team, the education team, the and the regeneration team who have worked tirelessly. I've observed them. They they're looking really tired. Although I do say that Mr. Smith is looking very dapper this morning online, but differently to what I normally see him, who is always looking shattered the amount of hours that he's putting into work. People like Paul Ralph in economic development responding to very tight deadlines to get money put in, and our education team, especially again over this time. So we often say our greatest asset is our staff. We can generally hand on heart say, you know, our staff are our greatest asset.
Absolutely, Councillor Francis Davis. And one of the things I know where you'll be aware we're discussing at present is how we reward the staff for the extraordinary efforts they've made again this year, especially many of them having to change their roles to support our communities to get safely through COVID. So it is something that I know we'll be making an announcement on in due course in terms of that reward and recognition programme that we will be rolling out for our staff. Okay, if there aren't any further questions or comments, I'll ask Mr. Borsden again to launch the vote.
Yeah, I've launched that now, Leader, so it should be on the screen for members. Has everyone received it? Yeah. Give you some time to vote. Councillor Lewis, would you like to do your vote verbally again?
Yes, please, I vote for.
Thank you. I'll close the poll now, Leader. Again, that's unanimous for the recommendation.
Okay, thank you all. We'll move then to item 11, local governor appointments. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I formally remove the report, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Very happy to second. Any comments or questions? If not, again, Mr. Borsden, if you could launch the vote.
Yep. Just launch now, Leader.
Thank you.
All members has received it. Councillor Lewis, would you like to do your vote verbally, please?
Yes, I vote for.
Thank you.
Excuse me, it hasn't come through to me, this one. I don't know why.
Okay, Councillor Child.
Can I record my vote for, please?
Thank you very much. I'll just close the poll. So again, Leader, that's unanimous for the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Borsden. Excellent. Thank you, colleagues. Moving to item 12, this is the capital programme for remodelling hard-standing areas at land at Pontedilais Comprehensive School. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Again, can I thank the officers who've been involved in preparing this scheme and the report to Cabinet, and I think it outlines what will deliver a much-needed all-weather facility in Pontedilais, using a great deal of the existing infrastructure, so that has benefits as well. It's in line with a policy of community-facing schools. It'll bring an ability for the school to enrich its curriculum, and also it'll bring much-needed improved facilities for the community in Pontedilais. So I have pleasure in moving the report, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'll go to Councillor Francis Davis next.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, Leader. It was a commitment that you made of an all-weather pitch in Pontedilais, and I know that you had been, I suppose, nagged, I suppose, by Councillor Phil Downing in Pontedilais to keep that promise of an all-weather pitch in the Pontedilais area, and we are certainly delivering on that. And by November 21, that all-weather service will be in Pontedilais. It's very important for the school. it's hard wearing. It can be used all the year round, and it will be greatly enhanced by the community being able to use it as well. So I'd like to thank you, and I suppose Councillor Downing for being that nag. So it's great to see this extra facility in the city and county of Swansea.
Thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. Yes, very, very pleased to see this report here today. And as I've said before, whilst we have a very ambitious programme, we did make specific commitments around additional all-weather pitches and 3G pitches across the county, which we've delivered on. Of course, not everything can be delivered in the first year. And very pleased to see this scheme being delivered now before the end of the term, with a contribution, I have to say, from local members, specifically Councillor Phil Downing, who, as you say, has continuously pushed very hard on behalf of the school and the community for this scheme, and I know will be delighted with the report today. So congratulations to Councillor Downing. I know also Tonya Antonazzi and Rebecca Evans, the local members there, had also been heavily lobbying on behalf of the school and the community for this facility, and I'm sure they will be delighted as well. So very, very happy to see this, and I assume Councillor Smith and Councillor Francis Davis has moved and seconded the report.
Right.
So I will therefore, if any members wish to comment or question on this report, if not, Mr. Bosden will go to the vote.
Yeah, just launched the vote now, Leader. All members can see it. Councillor Child, have you had it this time?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis, would you like to do your vote verbally?
Yes, please, I vote for.
Thank you. I'll close the poll now. And again, Leader, that's unanimous for the recommendation.
Thank you very much. OK, we'll move to item 13, which is increased planned places at Sculpen and Bryn. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Leader. This report is part of our strategy to enhance provision for learners with additional learning needs. I'm particularly glad to see that it's going to enable us to address more of the needs of our own pupils here in Swansea. I mean, fewer pupils having to leave the county for their needs to be met. I also note that there's a positive response in the consultation we undertook. Most of the issues that have been highlighted there are going to be addressed as part of the wider work around additional learning needs. So it is a positive next step in that programme. So I would move the report, Leader.
OK, thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm happy to formally second. Are there any comments or questions on the report? If not, you have the recommendations there on page 61, which have been moved. So, Mr. Bosden, if you could launch the vote, thank you.
Yep, just done that now, Chairman. All members see it and received it?
Yep.
Yeah. Councillor Lewis, do you want to do your vote verbally, please?
Yes, thank you, I vote for.
Thanks very much. Just close the poll now. Again, unanimous for the recommendation, Leader. Thank you.
OK, thank you very much. The next item is the Sustainable Landscape, Sustainable Places report. Councillor Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Looking for Cabinet approval today to approve the grant funding offer from Welsh Government of £325,000, specifically targeted 2 projects, Sustainable Landscape, Sustainable Places. That's something that's been developed in partnership with the UNB partnership, and it's primarily aimed at improving access for green spaces and to our natural heritage. I mean, particularly relevant and prevalent at this time with the pandemic. We've seen an upsurge in people wanting to get out and about for mental well-being and just for improvements to their everyday lives. So it's of critical importance that we look after and protect our natural heritage, but also improve the access to that. the first funding for that is an offer of £225,000 from Welsh Government. And by the way, I must add as well that this funding is 100% funded, so it doesn't require any match funding from the authority. The second scheme is through Sustainable Development Fund, and that's to accept an offer of £100,000, which we will use and develop projects throughout the year with the team as is normal. You know, we've had this sort of funding before, and then it's used within this financial year to for projects that can be developed further in detail, involving communities and that. So, and that's used primarily support projects that work to conserve and enhance natural beauty, wildlife, landscape, etc. So just looking for the Cabinet to approve. Further details of all the individual schemes are encapsulated within the report, Chair. I'm happy to move the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Child.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on how pleased I am to see this report. There are a significant number of positive items that it's addressing. I particularly want to mention the Clyne Valley, which a management plan for Clyne Valley is plans for that, assistance in that is really welcome. And I'm really excited by the Port Einham proposals as well. I think there'll be a huge improvement in the area, and I think it just demonstrates the keenness and the good stewardship Swansea Council has for the AONB, and how vital we think it is to the people that live there, the rest of the people of Swansea, and all the people that visit.
Thank you, Councillor Child. Did you formally second the report as well? Sorry, I missed if you did. Did you wish to?
I'm not sure if I can, if I've declared an interest. I would be happy to.
Okay, no problem. Okay, that seems fine, I think. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Child, you have the recommendations which begin on page 87 and go on to page 88. All happy to vote? Okay, thank you, Mr. Bosden, for launching the vote.
All members received it, or can you see it? Yeah. Councillor Lewis, do you want to do your vote verbally?
Thank you. Yes, I vote for.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues.
Again, it's unanimous for the recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bosden. I know a couple of members will need to dip out now for the next item, as they've declared personal and prejudicial interests. So I'll give members 2 seconds to dip out.
How do we know when to come back in, Leader?
Mr. Bosden will invite you back in.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I think that's everybody. Okay, on this report, which I'll take in the absence of Councillor Francis Davis, this report provides ongoing assistance to some of our partnerships that run major facilities in and across the city and county of Swansea, specifically to Freedom Leisure, who run obviously the LC and our leisure facilities, as well as the Wales National Pool. The recommendations are contained there on page 4 and 5. As you know, it's important that we continue to support those operations in our city that are important for health and well-being. We made a commitment early days of the pandemic that we would try and protect and maintain as many services and as many jobs in the city as we can. Given that many of the staff who are now operating within some of these organisations were previously also employees of the council, there was also a principal position to look to continue to support those individuals to retain their jobs and for those facilities to be available for the people of Swansea. So very happy to move the recommendations on page 136 and 137, and that we continue to support these vital facilities for the people of Swansea. Okay, could I ask for somebody to second, please?
I'm happy to second that, Leader. I'm quite, to be honest, I think it's only right and proper that we have supported these individuals throughout this pandemic, and hopefully we'll be in a better place and retain them. So when we get back to normal, for the wealth and well-being of our citizens, that they'll be in a better place to assist us too. So, and I know the trade union work very closely with us on this particular item, and in partnership. So they're very happy with the situation too. So I'm quite proud to actually support this recommendation and move it. Sorry, second it.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. That's appreciated. Any questions or comments from members? If not, Mr. Bosden, I'll ask you again to launch the vote, please.
Yes, launched now, Chairman. So can everyone see it and receive it? Yeah. Councillor Lewis, do you want to do your vote verbally, please?
Yes, please. I vote for.
Thank you. Close the poll now, Leader. Sorry, the machine's a bit slow on this one. Yeah, it's come through now. So it's unanimous, obviously all the members present, it's unanimous for the recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll pause again, Mr. Bosden, while if you could invite the members back into the meeting, please. Oh, actually, it may be better if we leave them out of the meeting and then bring them back in after item 17.
Okay.
Oh, I'll go again.
Prejudicial interest for items 15 and 17.
Yeah. Okay, so for the members present then, exclusions of the public of the legal officer's rationale for going into private session. Are you all happy to accept that? Okay, thank you very much. And again, that's carried. So I'll pause while Mr. Bosden pauses the recording.
Yeah.